The massive dome stretched above Maya Chen like a metal sky. She sat in the back row of the amphitheater, her small human form dwarfed by the alien cadets around her. 3,000 students filled the curved seats, but only 12 were human. The rest belonged to species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Maya pulled her gray academy uniform straight and checked her datapad. Today was the final examination for advanced military strategy. After 2 years at the Galactic Defense Academy, she still felt like an outsider. The other humans kept to themselves, afraid to draw attention. They had learned to stay quiet and blend in. The Zenthran instructor, Commander Veltar, stood at the center of the amphitheater. His tall, insect-like body cast long shadows under the bright lights. His forearms moved as he spoke, and his mandibles clicked with each word. Behind him, a holographic star map showed the galaxy's core worlds. "Today you will face your final challenge," Veltar announced. His voice echoed through the dome. "You must design a defense strategy for our core worlds. The enemy has better technology than us. They have more ships than us. They have more soldiers than us. Your job is to stop them." Maya leaned forward in her seat. Around her, the alien cadets whispered to each other in their native languages. She caught fragments of their conversations. They spoke of honor, of glorious battles, of meeting the enemy head-on with superior tactics. "The rules are simple," Veltar continued. "You will work in teams of 50. Each team has 1 week to prepare their presentation. The winning strategy will be added to our official defense protocols." A Kitherian cadet raised one of his 6 arms. "Commander, what about the doctrine of honorable engagement?" Veltar's mandibles clicked approvingly. "Excellent question, Cadet Zexhui. All strategies must follow established military doctrine. We have fought this way for 3,000 years. We have never lost a war. No cadet may defy these proven methods." Maya felt her stomach tighten. The doctrine of honorable engagement was everything wrong with galactic military thinking. It demanded fair fights, open battles, and straightforward tactics. It worked when both sides had similar technology and numbers, but against a superior enemy it was suicide. She looked around at her fellow humans. They sat quietly, accepting the rules without question. That was how humans survived at the academy. They followed orders, kept their heads down, and graduated with decent grades. None of them had ever challenged the instructors. Maya's hand started to rise before she could stop it. The amphitheater fell silent. 3,000 alien eyes turned to look at the small human in the back row. Maya felt her heart racing, but she kept her hand up. Commander Veltar stared at her for a long moment. Then his mandibles spread in what might have been amusement. "Yes, Cadet Chen?" Maya stood up. Her voice sounded tiny in the huge space. "Commander, what if the established doctrine doesn't work against this enemy?" Gasps echoed through the amphitheater. Several alien cadets hissed in shock. Questioning doctrine was not done. It was almost blasphemy. Veltar's 4 eyes focused on Maya. "Cadet Chen, are you suggesting that 3,000 years of military wisdom is wrong?" "I'm suggesting that maybe we need new ideas for new threats," Maya replied. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. "If the enemy is better than us in every way, we can't beat them by fighting fair." The amphitheater erupted in angry voices. Alien cadets shouted at Maya in dozens of languages. The Zenthran students clicked their mandibles aggressively. The reptilian Saurons hissed and showed their teeth. Commander Veltar raised all 4 arms for silence. The noise died instantly. He looked at Maya with cold amusement. "Cadet Chen, let me make something clear. No cadet defies us. No cadet questions doctrine. No cadet suggests that the Galactic Defense Force needs to learn from a probationary species." Maya felt anger rising in her chest. Probationary species. That was what they called humans. New to the galaxy. Untested, primitive. She thought about all the wars in human history. All the impossible victories won by the smaller, weaker force. "Then watch me start," she said. The words hung in the air like a challenge. The entire amphitheater stared at her in shock. No one had ever spoken to an instructor like that. No human had ever dared to defy the council so openly. Veltar's mandibles clicked rapidly. Maya could not tell if he was angry or amused. "Very well, Cadet Chen. You will lead your own team. 50 volunteers from any species. You have 1 week to prove that human thinking can improve upon 3 millennia of galactic wisdom." Maya looked around the amphitheater. The alien cadets stared at her with expressions ranging from disgust to curiosity. Most of her fellow humans looked terrified. They had spent 2 years learning to fit in, and now Maya had made them all targets. "I accept," Maya said. "Excellent," Veltar replied. "I look forward to your presentation." Class dismissed. The cadets began filing out of the amphitheater. Maya stayed in her seat watching them go. Most of the aliens ignored her completely. A few shot hostile glances in her direction. The humans hurried past without making eye contact. As the crowd thinned, Maya noticed one figure approaching her. It was Senior Instructor HFY, a scarred veteran from the Kith Rebellion. Unlike the other instructors, he had actually fought in real battles. His gray skin bore the marks of plasma burns, and his left arm had been replaced with a mechanical prosthetic. "Cadet Chen," he said quietly. "May I speak with you?" Maya nodded. HFY sat down beside her, his movements stiff with old injuries. "That was either very brave or very stupid," he said. "I have not decided which. Does it matter?" Maya asked. HFY studied her with his remaining natural eye. "Perhaps not. Tell me, do you really think you can create a better strategy?" Maya met his gaze. "I think the current strategies will get everyone killed." "And you believe human methods are superior?" "I believe human methods are different," Maya said. "And sometimes different is what you need." HFY was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Cadet Chen, I have fought in 17 battles across 12 star systems. I have seen what happens when doctrine fails, but I have also seen what happens to those who challenge the system too openly." "Are you warning me?" "I am telling you to be careful," HFY said. "Your ideas may have merit, disturbing merit, but there are those who will not tolerate such challenges regardless of their value." He stood up slowly, favoring his damaged leg. "You have 1 week, Cadet Chen, make it count." As HFY limped away, Maya remained alone in the empty amphitheater. The holographic star map still glowed at the center, showing the peaceful core worlds that she was supposed to defend. She thought about human history, about all the times the underdog had won through cunning, sacrifice, and unconventional tactics. The alien military doctrine was based on honor, tradition, and overwhelming force. It had worked for 3,000 years because they had always fought similar enemies with similar thinking. But Maya knew that somewhere out there, a different kind of enemy was waiting. An enemy that would not play by the galaxy's rules. An enemy that would exploit every weakness in the traditional way of war. She stood up and walked toward the exit. 1 week to assemble a team. 1 week to design a strategy that could save the galaxy. 1 week to prove that sometimes the newest voice in the room had the most important things to say. Maya Chen had just declared war on 3,000 years of military tradition. Now she had to win it. Maya stood in the small conference room, looking at the 37 cadets who had volunteered for her team. It was not the 50 she had hoped for, but it was more than she had expected. Most were humans who felt they had nothing to lose. A few were aliens from smaller species who had been overlooked by the prestigious teams. "Thank you all for coming," Maya began. "I know this is risky. I know most of your classmates think we're crazy. They might be right." A nervous laugh rippled through the group. Maya recognized faces she had seen around the academy but never spoken to. There was Jin Watanabe, a quiet Japanese engineer. Sarah Martinez, a Brazilian pilot who had grown up on a mining station. Even a few aliens had joined them. Kriya, a young Sauron female whose family had been merchants, and Thixapol, a Zenthran who walked with a limp from a childhood accident. "What's the plan?" asked David Kim, one of the human navigation specialists. Maya activated the holographic projector in the center of the table. A star map appeared, showing the galaxy's core worlds surrounded by defensive positions. "First, I need to know something. How many of you have studied human military history?" About half the humans raised their hands. None of the aliens did. "Good," Maya said. "Then you know that humans have won wars while outnumbered and outgunned. We've done it by refusing to fight fair." She manipulated the hologram, highlighting the outer colonies. "Traditional galactic strategy says we defend everything. We spread our forces thin, trying to protect every world. When the enemy attacks, we meet them in open battle. That is the honorable way," Kriya said. Her reptilian features showed confusion. "Why would we not defend our people?" Maya looked at the young Sauron. "Because sometimes you have to sacrifice the few to save the many. Look at this." She changed the display, showing enemy forces advancing toward the core worlds. "The enemy has better ships and more soldiers. If we fight them straight up, we lose. But what if we don't fight them where they expect? The hologram shifted again. This time it showed the outer colonies being evacuated instead of defended. The enemy forces advanced quickly, but they found empty worlds. We let them take the outer systems, Maya explained. We fall back to prepared positions. We make them stretch their supply lines across hundreds of light years. That's cowardice, muttered Thickspole. Even among the volunteers, galactic military thinking ran deep. No, Maya said firmly. It's strategy. We can't win by being brave. We can only win by being smart. She changed the display once more. Now it showed something that made several cadets gasp. Small human ships appeared throughout the enemy's captured territory, striking at supply convoys and communication relays. Guerrilla warfare, Sarah Martinez whispered. Hit-and-run attacks. Exactly, Maya said. While the main enemy fleet advances toward our strong points, we send small teams behind their lines. We blow up their supply ships. We jam their communications. We make them fight on 100 different fronts. Jin Watanabe leaned forward. The Academy teaches that such tactics are dishonorable. The Academy teaches what works against honorable enemies, Maya replied. But what if our enemy doesn't care about honor? What if they just want to win? She pulled up historical examples from human conflicts, guerrilla campaigns from Earth's past, where smaller forces had defeated larger ones through patience and cunning. This is how humans have always fought when we were outmatched, she explained. We don't stand in lines and trade shots. We hide, we strike, we disappear. We make the enemy afraid of shadows. The room was quiet as the cadets absorbed this information. Finally, Kriya spoke up. These tactics, they seem primitive. Primitive works, Maya said. Sometimes the old ways are better than the new ones. She spent the next hour explaining her complete strategy. Evacuation protocols that would deny the enemy resources. Hidden supply caches that could support resistance fighters for years. False flag operations to confuse enemy intelligence. The most controversial part came last. Some missions will be one-way trips, Maya said quietly. Ships designed to cause maximum damage before being destroyed. Volunteers who won't be coming home. The silence in the room was deafening. The concept of suicide missions was alien to galactic military thinking. Soldiers were expected to fight bravely, but they were also expected to survive if possible. You're talking about deliberately sending people to die, David Kim said. I'm talking about people choosing to die for a purpose, Maya corrected. In human history, some of our greatest victories came from people who sacrificed themselves to save others. She showed them examples. Kamikaze pilots from World War II. Soldiers who threw themselves on grenades to save their comrades. Naval captains who rammed enemy ships to protect their fleets. The enemy will have shields, armor, and defensive systems designed to stop conventional attacks, Maya explained. But they won't expect someone to fly directly into their command ship, knowing they'll die in the explosion. Thickspole stood up abruptly. This is madness. You're talking about throwing lives away. I'm talking about spending lives to buy victory, Maya said. Every strategy has a cost. The question is whether we're willing to pay it. The Zenthran cadet limped toward the door, then stopped. You humans are either the bravest species in the galaxy or the most insane. Maybe both, Maya admitted. Thickspole thought for a moment, then returned to his seat. Continue. Maya spent the rest of the week refining the strategy with her team. They wargamed scenarios, planned supply routes, and calculated casualty estimates. The numbers were sobering, but they showed something that traditional strategies could not: a path to victory. The day of the presentation arrived. Maya and her team entered the amphitheater to find it packed with cadets and instructors. Word had spread about the humans' radical proposals. Everyone wanted to see if she would really challenge 3,000 years of military doctrine. Commander Veltar called for order. Cadet Chen, present your strategy. Maya activated the main holographic display. The star map appeared, showing the galaxy in all its glory. She looked out at the sea of alien faces, many hostile, some curious, a few supportive. Honored instructors, she began. My team proposes a strategy based on a simple principle. When you cannot win through strength, you must win through cunning. She began her presentation, explaining each phase of the plan: the evacuation of outer colonies, the guerrilla campaigns, the false retreats that would draw enemy forces into prepared kill zones. The audience grew restless as she described tactics they had never seen before. When she reached the section on suicide missions, several instructors stood up in outrage. "This is barbarism," shouted Instructor Kelnoth, a proud Catherian general. You speak of war crimes. I speak of victory, Maya replied calmly. Your honor code assumes the enemy shares your values. What if they don't? She continued despite the interruptions. When she finished, the amphitheater was in chaos. Cadets argued loudly while instructors demanded order. Commander Veltar finally restored quiet. He looked at Maya with cold disapproval. Cadet Chen, your strategy violates every principle of civilized warfare. It is cruel, dishonorable, and beneath the dignity of the Galactic Defense Force. Maya felt her heart sinking. She had known this would happen, but it still hurt to hear her work dismissed so completely. Your grade is the lowest possible, Veltar continued. Your team will receive remedial training in proper military doctrine. Class dismissed. As the amphitheater emptied, Maya sat alone with her team. They had worked so hard and it had all been for nothing. The galaxy would continue to prepare for war the way it always had. But as the crowd dispersed, Senior Instructor Vexhai approached their table. He looked around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned close to Maya. Your plan, he whispered, has disturbing merit. Maya looked up at him in surprise. I have seen what happens when conventional tactics fail, Vexhai continued. I have watched fleets burn because commanders were too proud to adapt. Your strategy is ugly and brutal, but it might actually work. He straightened up and spoke louder for anyone who might be listening. Report to my office tomorrow for additional instruction in proper doctrine. As he walked away, Maya realized what he was really saying. Her plan had been rejected officially, but someone in the academy was taking it seriously. Someone who had actually fought in real battles. Maybe her week of defiance had not been wasted after all. 3 months after Maya's failed presentation, she sat in the academy's communication center, monitoring routine patrol reports. It was boring work assigned to cadets who needed extra discipline. Maya had been doing it every day since her strategy was rejected. The first alert came from the Outer Rim, a mining system called Kepler 442. The automated distress beacon was brief and broken. Unknown ships. Massive fleet. Request immediate. Transmission ends. Maya frowned at her console. Pirates sometimes attacked isolated systems, but they rarely bothered with distress calls. She flagged the report for investigation and continued her shift. 2 hours later, another alert arrived from the neighboring system of New Ceres. This one was clearer. This is Defense Station Omega. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Enemy technology is... Dear gods, they're harvesting the colonists. Repeat, the enemy is not destroying settlements. They are taking the people. Request immediate military assistance. Station Omega out. Maya felt ice forming in her stomach. She immediately forwarded the report to the Academy Command Center and requested permission to investigate. The duty officer aboard Zenthran Lieutenant waved her away. Probably pirates with new tactics, he said. The patrol fleet will handle it. But Maya knew this was different. She had studied every pirate organization in the galaxy for her strategy project. None of them had fleets large enough to attack multiple systems simultaneously. None of them took prisoners instead of valuables. Over the next 6 hours, 17 more systems went silent. By the time the Academy's senior staff took notice, it was too late. The enemy fleet had swept through the entire Outer Rim like a plague, consuming everything in its path. Billions of people had simply vanished. Maya watched from the communication center as reports flooded in from the few survivors. The enemy ships were unlike anything in galactic databases. They moved in perfect formation, as if controlled by a single mind. Their weapons cut through shields and armor like paper. Worst of all, they showed no interest in negotiation or surrender. They're not conquering, whispered Commander Torres, one of the human instructors who had joined Maya to monitor the crisis. They're harvesting. The holographic display showed the enemy's advance in real time. A red tide spreading inward from the galactic rim, swallowing star systems whole. The few military ships that engaged the invaders were destroyed so quickly that most never managed to send detailed reports. What are we looking at? Asked Cadet Jin Watanabe, who had been working alongside Maya in the communication center. The end of everything, Maya replied quietly. The Academy's emergency assembly hall filled with confused and frightened cadets. Commander Veltar stood at the center, his usual confidence replaced by barely controlled panic. The enemy fleet has been designated as the Devourers, he announced. They have consumed 43 star systems in the past 18 hours. Long-range sensors indicate their fleet contains over 10,000 ships of unknown design. Gasps echoed through the hall. The entire Galactic Defense Force had fewer than 3,000 ships scattered across the galaxy. All leave is cancelled, Veltar continued. All cadets will be assigned to emergency defense preparations. The Council of Worlds has authorized full military mobilization. Maya watched as the Academy transformed overnight into a military command center. Cadets who had been studying theoretical warfare suddenly found themselves planning real defenses. The elegant halls filled with refugees, wounded soldiers, and desperate communications from the front lines. The first major engagement came at the Centauri defense line, a fortified system that guarded one of the main approaches to the core worlds. Admiral Kethavar, the pride of the Zenthran fleet, had positioned 200 ships in perfect defensive formation. Maya and half the Academy watched the battle through long-range sensors. It should have been a glorious victory for galactic forces. The Centauri line was exactly the kind of static defense that had worked for 3,000 years. The Devourers arrived in a massive wave, their ships moving with inhuman precision. They ignored the defensive positions entirely, diving straight into the planet's atmosphere. While Admiral Kethavar's fleet tried to pursue them, smaller Devourer ships emerged from hyperspace behind the defense line. The battle lasted exactly 47 minutes. When it was over, the entire Zenthran fleet was destroyed and Centauri Prime was being systematically harvested. 8 billion people processed in less than an hour. They're not fighting us, Maya realized as she studied the battle recordings. They're just removing obstacles. Senior Instructor Vexhai limped over to her station. His scarred face was grim. Explain. Look at their movement patterns, Maya pointed to the tactical display. They don't care about destroying our ships. They just want to reach the planets. Our fleets are trying to fight a traditional space battle, but the enemy is playing a completely different game. Vexhai studied the data. You're right. They're treating our warships like an annoyance, not a threat. Over the following weeks, the same pattern repeated across a dozen star systems. Galactic forces would take defensive positions, following 3,000 years of established doctrine. The Devourers would ignore the defenses, harvest the planets, and destroy any ships that got in their way. Maya watched each defeat with growing horror and frustration. Every battle followed the same script. Honorable formations, direct engagement, catastrophic failure. The enemy's technology was superior, but that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was that galactic forces were fighting yesterday's war, while the Devourers were fighting tomorrow's. We need to change tactics, Maya told Vexhai after the loss of the Paradise Cluster. The High Command is considering new strategies. Vexhai replied carefully. Are they considering my strategy? Vexhai was quiet for a long moment. Your presentation has been reviewed by certain individuals. There is growing interest in unconventional approaches. Maya felt a spark of hope. When? When the conventional approaches have been fully exhausted, Vexhai said sadly. The Council of Worlds still believes that honor and tradition will save us. But tradition was dying with every harvested world. The Devourers' advance had slowed as they processed their captures, but intelligence reports suggested they were building new ships with each system they consumed. Soon they would resume their march toward the core worlds. Maya spent her days monitoring communications and her nights studying everything the Academy could learn about the enemy. The Devourers were machines, but not simple robots. They showed tactical flexibility and learning capability. They adapted to each new defense, becoming more efficient with every battle. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist studying the few Devourer artifacts recovered from battle sites, discovered something terrifying. The enemy ships contained biological components, processed remains of the people they had harvested. They're not just taking our people, Dr. Vasquez explained to the Emergency Council. They're using them, converting them into part of their fleet. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Academy. The Devourers weren't just an invasion force. They were a plague that grew stronger by consuming its victims. Maya stared at the research data, her mind racing. If the enemy used biological components, they might have biological weaknesses. If they converted their victims instead of simply killing them, they might be vulnerable to the tactics she had proposed. Commander Vexhai, she said during one of their regular briefings, how many more systems do we have to lose before the Council admits the traditional methods aren't working? Vexhai looked older than his years. The constant bad news had aged him visibly. The core defense fleet is being assembled at Terra Nova. Admiral Jeltash commands over 800 ships. If that fails, it will fail, Maya said with certainty. The Admiral will arrange his ships in a defensive formation around Terra Nova. The Devourers will ignore him and attack the planet directly. Half his fleet will be destroyed trying to protect the orbital installations, and the other half will be destroyed trying to retreat. You seem very certain of that outcome. I am certain because I've watched it happen 12 times already, Maya replied. The only question is whether anyone will listen to alternatives before we run out of systems to defend. Vexhai studied her for a long moment. Cadet Chen, if you were given command of the core defense fleet, what would you do differently? Maya had been thinking about this question for weeks. I wouldn't defend Terra Nova at all. I'd evacuate the population and turn the entire system into a trap. And if the Council refuses to abandon a core world, Maya met his gaze steadily. Then we'll lose this war and the Devourers will harvest every living being in the galaxy. Sometimes the choice isn't between good and bad options. Sometimes it's between bad options and extinction. That night, as Maya lay in her narrow academy bunk, she could hear the distant sounds of refugee ships arriving from the latest fallen systems. Each ship brought stories of horror that she tried not to imagine. Somewhere out there, the Devourer fleet was growing stronger. Somewhere out there, the remnants of the galactic military were preparing for another doomed defense. And somewhere in the Academy's corridors, she hoped, people were finally starting to realize that 3,000 years of military tradition might not be enough to save them. The emergency session of the High Council was held in the deepest bunker of the Academy. Maya had never seen so many high-ranking officers in one place. Admirals, generals, and fleet commanders from every species in the galaxy sat around a circular table, their faces showing the strain of constant defeat. Admiral Jeltash, the Zenthran commander of the core defense fleet, had arrived that morning with news that everyone expected but no one wanted to hear. Terra Nova had fallen exactly as Maya had predicted. 800 ships reduced to scrap metal in 6 hours. 12 billion people harvested. Maya stood at the back of the room with Senior Instructor Vexhai trying to remain invisible. She was only there because Vexhai had insisted that the Council needed to hear from alternative strategic thinkers. Most of the officers had no idea who she was. The situation is critical, announced Fleet Admiral Corson, the highest-ranking military officer in the galaxy. The Devourers have consumed 70% of our territory. Their fleet now numbers over 15,000 ships, and they show no signs of slowing their advance. Our remaining forces are insufficient for conventional defense, added General Thekmor of the Sauron Republic. Every engagement has resulted in defeat. Our weapons cannot penetrate their shields effectively, and their tactics make our formations irrelevant. Maya listened as the galaxy's greatest military minds discussed their options. Evacuation of the core worlds, last stands at strategic choke points, desperate attempts to contact other galaxies for aid. Every suggestion was a variation of the same failed strategies they had been using for months. Perhaps it is time to consider unconventional approaches, suggested Admiral Yexelai, a veteran Catherian commander who had lost 3 fleets to the Devourers. The room fell silent. In galactic military culture, suggesting unconventional tactics was almost an admission of defeat. What exactly are you proposing? Asked Fleet Admiral Corson. Admiral Yexelai hesitated. There are theories that have been developed by some of our strategic analysts, approaches that diverge from traditional doctrine. You mean the human proposals, said Admiral Jeltash bluntly. The barbaric strategies that were rejected by the Academy Review Board. Maya felt every eye in the room turn toward her. Her heart pounded as she realized she was about to become the center of attention in the most important military meeting in galactic history. Is the author of those proposals present? Asked Fleet Admiral Corson. Vexhai stepped forward. Yes, sir. Cadet Maya Chen designed the strategic framework in question. Cadet Chen stepped forward. Maya walked to the center of the circle, acutely aware that she was surrounded by beings who had commanded fleets longer than humans had known space travel existed. Her gray academy uniform felt shabby next to their elaborate dress uniforms. Cadet Chen, Fleet Admiral Corson began, I have reviewed your proposals. They are innovative, however. They require tactics that violate established conventions of warfare. With respect, sir, Maya replied. Established conventions are why we're losing this war. A ripple of shocked murmurs went around the table. No cadet had ever spoken so directly to the fleet admiral. "Explain," Corson said simply. Maya took a deep breath. "The Devourers don't follow our conventions. They don't care about honor or fair fighting. They care about efficiency. Every time we meet them in traditional battle, we make it easy for them to destroy us." She gestured toward the holographic display showing the current tactical situation. "Look at their pattern. They ignore our strongest positions and attack our weakest points. They harvest civilians while our fleets chase them around empty space. They're not fighting a war. They're conducting a harvest operation and we're just getting in their way." "And your solution?" asked Admiral Jeltash, his mandibles clicking with skepticism. "We stop fighting their war and make them fight ours," Maya said. "We use tactics they can't predict or counter. Guerrilla warfare, false retreats, asymmetric attacks. We target their supply lines, disrupt their communications, and force them to spread their forces across hundreds of fronts." She manipulated the holographic display, showing how human tactics could be applied on a galactic scale. "The Devourers are efficient because they can coordinate perfectly. But what if we attack their coordination? What if we jam their communications and force their ships to operate independently?" General Thekmore leaned forward. "You're describing terrorist tactics." "I'm describing survival tactics," Maya corrected. "When you're outnumbered and outgunned, you don't win by fighting fair. You win by fighting smart." The debate that followed was intense. Some officers were horrified by Maya's proposals. Others were intrigued by the possibility of something that might actually work. All of them were desperate enough to consider options they would have rejected months earlier. Finally, Fleet Admiral Corson called for order. "Cadet Chen, these tactics you propose, they would require voluntary suicide missions. Ships designed to be destroyed. Soldiers who would not return home." "Yes, sir," Maya said quietly. "Some missions would be one-way trips. And you believe we can find volunteers for such assignments?" Maya looked around the room at the defeated faces of the galaxy's military leadership. "Sir, we've already lost most of our fleets. The only question is whether those losses accomplish anything meaningful." The silence stretched for long minutes. Finally, Admiral Yexlai spoke up. "Fleet Admiral, I volunteer to serve under Cadet Chen's command. My remaining ships have failed to stop the Devourers using conventional tactics. Perhaps it is time to try unconventional ones." "As do I," said Captain Velnash, a young Zenthran officer who had escaped the Terra Nova disaster. "I have seen what happens when we fight the enemy's war. I would rather die fighting our own." One by one, more officers added their support. Not all of them. Many were too proud or too set in their ways. But enough to give Maya hope. Fleet Admiral Corson studied the faces around the table. "Very well. Cadet Chen, you are hereby promoted to the rank of Strategic Commander and given authority over all volunteer forces. Your mission is to implement your unconventional strategies and determine their effectiveness against the Devourer fleet." Maya felt dizzy. A few months ago, she had been a nobody cadet with crazy ideas. Now she was being given command of the galaxy's last hope. "What resources do I have?" she asked. "Whatever you can convince to follow you," Corson replied. "Ships, personnel, equipment, all volunteer only. The Council cannot officially endorse tactics that violate galactic military conventions, but we can allow field experiments under emergency protocols." Maya nodded. "I understand, sir. How long do I have?" "Intelligence suggests the Devourers will reach the inner core worlds within 6 weeks," said Admiral Jeltash. "If your methods are going to work, we need to see results quickly." The meeting broke up with Maya suddenly at the center of intense planning sessions. Admiral Yexlai provided her with detailed intelligence on Devourer fleet movements. Captain Velnash offered his knowledge of rapid deployment tactics. Even some of the skeptical officers shared technical data that might be useful. Maya's first task was assembling her forces. Word spread quickly through the academy and the refugee camps about the human commander, who was organizing a different kind of resistance. Volunteers came from every species, desperate survivors who had lost everything, young officers who wanted to fight back, and veterans who were tired of losing. Her old academy team formed the core of her staff. Jin Watanabe became her chief engineer, designing the modifications needed for asymmetric warfare. Sarah Martinez took charge of pilot training, teaching conventional fighters how to fly suicide missions. Even aliens like Kriya and Thixpol joined her command structure, bringing perspectives from their own military traditions. "How many ships do we have?" Maya asked during her first official command briefing. 237 vessels of various classes, reported Commander Torres, the human instructor who had become her operations officer. Most are damaged survivors from previous battles. We also have about 50 civilian ships that have been volunteered by their crews. Volunteers' crew strength? Approximately 15,000 beings from 14 different species, said Captain Velnash. Morale is surprisingly high considering the circumstances. Maya studied the roster of her makeshift fleet. It was barely 1/10 the size of the force that had failed at Terra Nova, and most of the ships were in poor condition. But for the first time since the invasion began, she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. "All right," she said to her assembled staff. "We're not going to save the galaxy by outfighting the Devourers. We're going to save it by making them fight a war they don't understand. Time to show them what happens when you pick a fight with creatures who've spent their entire history learning how to win." Against impossible odds, Maya looked out at the faces of her officers, aliens and humans working together, united by desperation and a shared willingness to try something different. "Give me your best estimates on Devourer fleet positions," she continued. "It's time to start the real war." The first test of Maya's unconventional warfare came at the Kepler station, a massive supply depot that the Devourers were using to process their latest harvests. Traditional strategy would have called for a direct assault on the station's defenses. Maya had a different plan. "Remember," she told her strike team commanders over the communication link, "we're not here to win a glorious battle. We're here to cause maximum disruption with minimum losses. Hit fast, hit hard, and get out before they can respond." 12 small ships approached the Kepler station from different vectors, disguised as refugee vessels. The Devourers had learned to ignore such ships, focusing instead on the military threats they understood. It was exactly the kind of assumption Maya planned to exploit. "Alpha Team, begin your run," Maya ordered from her command ship, hidden in the asteroid field outside the system. Captain Sarah Martinez led Alpha Team in what appeared to be a desperate escape attempt by a damaged freighter. The Devourer patrol ships ignored her just as Maya had predicted. At the last moment, Sarah's ship dropped its disguise and released a spread of improvised, explosive devices directly into the station's main power core. The explosion was visible across 3-star systems. "Bravo and Charlie teams, you're clear for Phase 2, Maya announced as emergency signals flooded Devourer communication channels. While the enemy scrambled to respond to the destroyed station, 2 more teams struck at supply convoys traveling through nearby systems. The attacks were swift and precise, destroying cargo ships before the escort vessels could react. In 6 hours, Maya's forces had eliminated 3 months' worth of Devourer supplies and processing capacity. The cost was minimal. 2 ships lost, 43 volunteers who had known the risks and accepted them. "How did you know they would ignore the refugee ships?" asked Admiral Yexelai, who had been monitoring the operation from the command vessel. "Because they're machines," Maya replied. "They follow patterns. They had seen 1,000 refugee ships and learned to categorize them as non-threats. They couldn't adapt fast enough when those non-threats suddenly became weapons." The success at Kepler Station was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, Maya's forces launched a dozen similar operations. Ghost ships that appeared to be disabled hulks until they exploded next to command vessels. False retreats that led Devourer fleets into prepared ambushes. Communication viruses that spread chaos through enemy coordination networks. Each operation was different, but they all shared the same philosophy: exploit the enemy's expectations and make them fight on unfamiliar ground. The Devourers began to adapt, but slowly. Their machine intelligence was powerful but inflexible. They had conquered dozens of civilizations using overwhelming force and superior technology. They had never faced an enemy that refused to fight fair. "The enemy is modifying their patrol patterns," reported Jin Watanabe during a strategy session. "They're starting to scan refugee ships more carefully." "Good," Maya said. "That means they're spending time and resources on defensive measures. Every minute they waste checking empty ships is a minute they're not harvesting planets. But it also means our current tactics will become less effective," pointed out Commander Torres. Maya nodded. "Then we'll change tactics. The moment they adapt to one approach, we switch to another. Keep them guessing. Make them paranoid." The real breakthrough came when Maya's forces discovered the Devourer communication network's central weakness: The enemy ships were controlled by a distributed intelligence that required constant coordination between vessels. Disrupt that coordination, and individual ships became much less effective. It's like cutting the nerves in a body, explained Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had joined Maya's science team. Each ship is like a finger or a toe, powerful on its own but much more dangerous when controlled by a central brain. Maya studied the network analysis. How do we jam their communications on a large scale? We can't, Jin Watanabe admitted. Their technology is too advanced. But we might be able to confuse it. He showed Maya his latest project, a communication virus designed to spread false orders through the Devourer network. Individual ships would receive contradictory commands, causing delays and confusion in their coordination. How do we deliver it? Maya asked. Someone has to get close enough to a command vessel to plant the virus directly, Jin said. Close enough to touch their hull. Maya understood immediately. Another suicide mission. Someone would have to pilot a ship directly into contact with a Devourer command vessel, upload the virus, and hope it spread before they were destroyed. I'll do it, said Captain Velnash without hesitation. My ship is fast enough to reach their command vessel, and my crew has already volunteered for high-risk operations. Maya looked at the young Zenthran officer. He had lost his entire family when Terra Nova fell. Like many of her volunteers, he had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Are you sure? She asked. Commander Chen, Velnash replied. My people have spent 3,000 years talking about honor in battle. You have shown us what honor actually means. It means doing what must be done, regardless of the cost. The operation to plant the virus was planned for the next major Devourer fleet movement. Intelligence suggested they were gathering forces for an assault on Sanctuary Prime, one of the last heavily populated core worlds. Maya's entire fleet moved into position around the system, hidden among asteroid fields and abandoned space stations. 200 ships against a Devourer force of over 3,000. It should have been hopeless. All units, this is Commander Chen, Maya broadcast on the encrypted channel. Today we're not trying to win a battle. We're trying to win the war. Every ship that gets through to upload the virus, every minute we delay their advance, brings us closer to victory. Captain Velnash's ship, disguised as a damaged Devourer vessel, approached the enemy command cluster. Maya watched on long-range sensors as he maneuvered through the massive fleet, invisible among ships that looked exactly like his disguised vessel. I'm in position, Velnash reported, beginning upload sequence. For 30 seconds, his ship was in direct contact with the main Devourer command vessel. Maya held her breath, knowing that discovery meant instant death for Velnash and his crew. Upload complete, Velnash announced. The virus is spreading through their network. I can see ships receiving conflicting orders already. Get out of there, Maya ordered. But it was too late. The Devourers had detected the intrusion. Energy beams lanced out from a dozen ships converging on Velnash's position. It's been an honor, Commander, Velnash said calmly. Then his ship disappeared in a flash of brilliant light. Maya felt tears running down her face, but she forced herself to focus on the tactical display. The virus was working. Devourer ships were breaking formation, receiving contradictory orders, moving in random directions. All units begin the assault, Maya commanded. Target disabled vessels only. Make every shot count. Her ships emerged from hiding like a swarm of angry insects, striking at confused Devourer vessels that couldn't coordinate their defense. It wasn't a fair fight. It was exactly what Maya had planned. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Devourer fleet was scattered and demoralized. For the first time since the invasion began, they retreated without achieving their objective. Maya's forces had lost 30 ships, including brave souls like Captain Velnash, who had made the ultimate sacrifice. But they had proven something important. The Devourers could be defeated. News of the victory spread throughout the galaxy. Resistance groups on occupied worlds began using Maya's tactics. Surviving military units abandoned traditional doctrine and adopted asymmetric warfare. The tide of the war began to turn, but Maya knew the final battle was still ahead. The Devourers were adapting to her tactics, becoming more cautious and defensive. Soon they would mass their remaining forces for one last push toward the Galactic core. That was when Maya would need to use her most desperate strategy, the one she had kept in reserve because it required a sacrifice too terrible to contemplate. 6 months after her first presentation to the Academy, Maya stood in the same amphitheater where the council had laughed at her ideas. But now the room was filled with officers from across the galaxy, eager to learn the unconventional tactics that had saved their worlds. The key to asymmetric warfare, Maya explained to her audience, is understanding that strength and weakness are relative. The Devourers were stronger than us in every conventional measure, but they were weaker in the one area that mattered most: adaptability. She looked out at the faces watching her, aliens and humans united by their shared survival. Many bore scars from the war. All had learned that sometimes the newest ideas were the most important ones. The galaxy survived because we were willing to abandon 3,000 years of military tradition, Maya continued. We learned that honor isn't about following rules. It's about doing whatever it takes to protect the people you serve. A young Sauron cadet raised her clawed hand. Commander Chen, how do we know when conventional tactics aren't working? Maya smiled at the question. It reminded her of herself just months earlier, raising her hand to challenge authority. You know when conventional tactics aren't working, she replied, when following them leads to defeat.